Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg, out of the studio, over at the library. We talk about it all the time, and we're in the Historical Society's room, the Fitchburg Historical Society's room. Love this space, by the way. And I'm joined by two friends of mine, Catherine and Diane, both with the Historical Society. And today we're talking about an upcoming event, your annual meeting, but also it's tied in with World War I. So we're kind of dive in a little bit, Fitchburg and World War I. And Catherine, you're going to kick things off today with a little history lesson.
Yes, just a little history lesson. World War I, actually we're in the 100th anniversary of the United States entry into World War I. Very significant event in our national history, locally, in Wisconsin history too. The war had been going on for almost 3.5 years by the time the United States entered into the war. So we held off. It was a European war as far as we were concerned in 1914 when it began. And the European powers were just locked in bitter warfare. So it was the British, the French, and the Russians who were fighting the German and the Austrian-Hungarian empire. So they had been engaged in horrific war. It was trench warfare, chemical weapons. You know, we talk about chemical weapons now. They were used to a large extent in World War I and then banned after that point because they were so horrific. So to just look at the size of this war that had been going on 3.5 years before the United States entry in April, this month actually, 100 years ago, 1917. So the question was, should the United States enter into this war? Looked like it was a European, but our interests were very involved too in trade and culturally and so on, what was going on in Europe. So Americans had been watching that very carefully over these last few years that the war was going on before we entered in. It was controversial because for one thing, we had a huge number of German immigrants, and particularly here in Wisconsin. We know if you look at the names of people who live in Wisconsin, you'll find a large German population here, descendants of those German immigrants. So that was one of the factors that made it especially difficult here in Wisconsin. And then, of course, here in Wisconsin, we have, because of the large immigrant population, we had just a lot of German culture. Newspapers were done in German. German was spoken quite commonly in Wisconsin. So to go to war against Germany, that was, that was a difficult decision to make. And then we had Senator Robert La Follette, who opposed the war. He was a pacifist from our state. And then when the vote came in 1917 to vote about entering the war, 9 of our 11 congressmen voted against going into the war. So it was not an easy decision. When we did go in, however, we supplied a lot of personnel to go into the war. 122,000 men and women served in World War I from Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of them. And then out of that number, 2,000 were killed. So we certainly made our contribution in that war. Just to give you the scale of the war itself, there were 70 million military personnel involved in that war, and 16 million casualties. So hugely decimating to the people who were engaged in that conflict. So we have a photo we brought along of the cadets marching up State Street from the Capitol, and shows them getting ready to head out for their training in Alabama just right after the war was declared. So
it's a pretty incredible photo, I've got to say. It's crazy to think, and it's not that long ago. I mean, we're really not talking that long ago. I mean, yes, it was a long time ago, but still, to me, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yes. And I was just going to mention that Fitchburg, we have a listing of the Fitchburg men who served in World War I. So there's 26 listed, and we were a small farming community 100 years ago. So to send 26 men into that war, and 2 were killed. So right here locally, we had that contribution.
That's incredible as well. So and you can see the list here, so it's
Yes.
pretty interesting indeed. All right, Diane, we've kind of got the setup here. So how do we proceed forward?
Well, Russell Horton, who's the head archivist at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, which is in downtown Madison, is going to be our speaker on April 30th. And he's going to talk about Wisconsin in World War I. And he has been he's been the reference archivist at the Veterans Museum since 2008. He has a bachelor's from UW-Madison and a master's from UW-Milwaukee, and he's also the son and grandson of veterans. The material that the Veterans Museum has in their archives consists of books by county for the individuals who served during World War I. So it's arranged by Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and nurses. And then what I worked on, and a number of other volunteers worked on with Russ, was putting the information into an online database, which is now up and running. And so you can go in, if you're looking for an ancestor who would have served from Wisconsin, you can go in and search by name, hometown, or the unit that they served with. And then if you do find a name that you want further information on, you can contact the Veterans Museum. They have certificates of service that you can purchase, which includes more information on the individual, because the online database has their name, their serial number if they had one, their rank. It may also tell you if they died during the war or if they were a deserter. And then behind that, if you do request additional information, you might be able to get a physical description, when they served overseas, that type of thing.
That's that's pretty cool. And thank you for working on all of that as well. That'll be incredible work.
It was an interesting project because, as Catherine mentioned, we had a lot of German people of German ancestry who lived in Wisconsin, and so when you look at the different counties, you can clearly see the different ethnicities. I did La Crosse, for example, and that was just filled with German and Norwegian names and that type of thing. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So that the meeting happens April 30th here, and I say annual meeting because it's your annual meeting, plus a special guest. You always have a special guest come out for it, and again, April 30th, 1:30 p.m. right here at the Fitchburg Public Library, and you can see Russell Horton and the rest of the Historical Society Board. You get an update from what you guys have been working on. I'm sure you'll mention the new website as well in this meeting, so check out their website. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it, and we'll see you on April 30th at the event.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jeremy. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a really quick break. We'll be right back. It is Talking Fitchburg.